What's up, Footer Nation? Gary Hootenholla here, and welcome to another episode of the Round Table. We got we got Joe and Will here. What's going on, guys?
Hi, Gary.
Who's that? Is that Sassy Squatch?
That's Littlefoot.
That's Littlefoot.
There you
Oh,
go, Littlefoot.
I love it. I love it. Well, this is our second episode of the Round Table, and as you all know, and if you don't know, what we do here is we talk Bigfoot here in New York. The New York Bigfoot Society has brought together a group of researchers throughout the whole state of New York to come together with this project, what we call Project X. Project X takes a look at the Bigfoot from a different perspective. You know, right now for this episode, we have three flesh and blood guys. So me, Joe, and Will, we all believe that Bigfoot is a flesh and blood creature. Project X, though, brings another element to the Bigfoot phenomena. The second half of the show, we will be talking about the paranormal Bigfoot with Mike, Carnan, and Rachel and Diane, as they more believe that it's a spiritual being and a spiritual creature. So we bring all the sides of the Bigfoot phenomena together for one project, and we look at it from all sides. So tonight, though, right now with us three, hey everyone, we're going to be talking about Bigfoot and tracks. Because once again, people come to us, people talk out there and they say, where's the evidence? Where's the body? Where, you say Bigfoot's real, but there's nothing to prove it. And my response is, what are you even talking about? There's so much stuff to prove that Bigfoot exists. But let's just start with something simple as far as tracks. Tracks don't lie. Tracks tell a story. And so tonight, us three are going to, look at tracks. What stories do tracks take? What stories, and there's one right there, what possible things do these things tell us? So let's get to work. Round table time. Joe and Will, what's up?
So there you go. Hey.
So Will is our professional tracker on our team, and that's his wheelhouse. That's what he does. So let's get right into it. So tell us about tracks, and what kind of stories do tracks tell?
Well, when we start looking at tracks, I study a lot of wildlife. So wildlife teaches us a lot, as well as people. And when we see tracks, it shows many different forms and many definitions and different reasons of the track itself. It tells a story of where they're going, how they're reacting, their gait, their movement, their stride. It also tells you the size, the body weight. A track tells you a million things, and learning how to distinguish the tracks and tell what type of tracks or what kind of animal it is, it also presents another challenge, as well as when you look at a human track, for instance, you walk in the snow, if I take your shoe off and you walk barefooted, you step on the snow, you'll get an actual track. But then within an hour, 2 hours, as the temperature changes and the barometer drops or the rise or fall of humidity, that track can actually expand 10 times the size and the length. So how do you tell if that's a Bigfoot track or a human track? In a sense like that, most people look at the overall size of a track, but the inner dimension, it will actually give you the more of a figure of the actual size. While many measure the outer form of the track, I like to measure the inside, because I always give myself an inch or a half an inch or 2 inch difference from the shape of the track due to the weather changes, whether it's in a rainy day in a mud situation, or whether you're in the sand, or whether you're in the snow. So, when we talk about tracking, it's so much to learn. And no matter how much that we know, we're still learning and we discover many new things. Track is the only affirmative proof of what exists and what does not exist. I can't debunk people's spiritual aspects of it, but I'm a tracker. So I study wildlife, I search game, I want to know how old is that animal, I want to know what type of animal it is. So this is something we learn while we're doing tracking. You, Joe?
Well, yeah, and I wouldn't call myself an expert tracker. You have much more knowledge of more of a more of a rounded general about animals in general. And it is true that, even though I'm not an expert tracker, My specialty for this team is, of course, the Bigfoot tracks, because that's what I've been studying. Now, yeah, I mean, I know the difference between a deer track and a moose track. Normally, it's the size for me, much bigger. You know, and I know the difference between a regular dog and even a coyote. There are slight differences, and you can tell. But when it comes to Bigfoot tracks, there's and hey, look, I can be fooled with the best of them sometimes. But when you're looking at Bigfoot tracks, and I agree with you, William, when it comes to Bigfoot tracks measurements, when you're measuring it, I agree with you. Instead of going from outside edge, if you're measuring across it, outside edge to outside edge, you go from the inner. You know, you go from the inner and from that, because number one, first of all, what I find really suspect most of the time, well, to a certain extent, I find suspect, are the actual perfect imprints. And I'll tell you why. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It does happen. Like I said, I got a couple of examples right here where it does happen. But you got to realize that the foot on a Sasquatch is very mobile, you know, and so no matter what strata that it's going to be, that it's walking on, whether it's mud or sand or snow or rocky ground or whatever, there's a mobility with that foot. So you're not always, these tracks that you're seeing, at least the ones I see, they're not these pristine fucking tracks, because there's always something about them that shows the mobility of the foot when it comes in contact with the ground. And some of the things about Sasquatch tracks that you really need to watch for to be able to tell whether it's actually made by a mobile foot carrying a several 100-pound animal along, and one that's been stamped in with a wooden cutout or something, is the different things. Now, these just happen to be two, if I can show them, that are reproductions. Okay, these are not ones that I took. These are not castings that I made. These are actually the castings of Patty. Okay, now this one, it's a reproduction. So, but you can tell this general size and shape. Now, if you've got a track that looks like this. Now, if I were to come upon one that looks like this, I'm going to study it very heavily before I say, "Oh yeah, that's a real Bigfoot track." Because, I mean, look at it; it's damn near perfect. You can see each toe, you know, perfectly. The whole shape of the foot. There's no indications, at least not in this reproduction. Now, there may have been, and there is some in the other one I have. There's no indication of any kind of slide with the foot is. You also don't see, and one of the very important things to look for in actual tracks is the mobility of the foot. Whereas we all know the Sasquatch have a foot which has a mid-tarsal joint. It means their foot bends in the middle. So when their foot comes down onto a surface, it comes down flat, but then it bends in the middle. So the heel part, this part, is actually what comes up. This part, the front part of the foot impression, is always going to be deeper than the back heel, always. And it's going to tend to show you that mid-tarsal, because most of the time, especially if it's in some loose strata like mud or sand, it's going to push a ridge, because this forefoot is giving it traction, and it's going to push a ridge back towards this mid-tarsal, where this mid-tarsal is. So oftentimes you're going to have, and this one actually shows a little better. You can see right here, this right here, you can see a little depression there. I don't know if you can see it well enough.
Yeah, you can see it. I can see it.
But you can see where the dip is, and where this one, the foot came down, and as they were stepping, of course, it bends, it pushed that ridge, which makes this little divot in the mid-tarsal. So that's some of the things. You also want to do, look at where the toes are. I mean, if there's no depth of impression to the toes, chances are you're not dealing with an actual Sasquatch track, because these toes are designed, and that's why they look so rounded, because they're designed to grip. They grip the ground as they walk. So those are some of the things you want to look at in an actual track. Now, a lot of times, unless you have this perfect track, which is rare, but not totally out of the realm, because people do get them, you're not always going to see a lot of these signs. Now, sometimes they're going to be there. Like if a Sasquatch is walking through mud, it may slip, right? So you're not going to have this perfect, oh, well, there's the mid-tarsal, and there's this, and there's this. But there are going to be other signs that, okay, was this a Bigfoot? Maybe it was a bear. Now, however, in soft soils, I think you're going to tell the same thing, William. Bears don't have retractable claws. So if they're in soft strata of some sort, you're always going to see claw marks on the toes. You're always going to see claw marks. Unless, of course, I've heard of times where bears, sometimes if they've worn their claws down so short, sometimes they may not leave them. But most of the time, if it's a bear print, you're going to see claw marks, especially in the soft soil. What else?
Well, one thing, I mean, let's say this. I'm going to post this picture in the chat room. We always talk about Bigfoot, but let's reverse back, because you know how I like to always keep it squatchy per se. You have Littlefoot, as you said. You're a little guy, right?
I'm a little guy. Yeah.
I think one thing that we forget when we're doing Bigfoot research is when we're in the woods, what I constantly see is big prints, obviously, because that's what we look for.
Right.
But we don't look for the small ones. We don't look for the little squatches, the juvenile squatches, the baby squatches. All right. I have a print that we're talking about toes and stuff. I'm going to put it into the chat room, and I know you've seen it, where you see, just like you said, all the toes are dug right in like a bare foot, but it's a very small track in one of my research areas in the Adirondacks that I think that is a nursery area where there is small ones. And this kind of backs up my theory. When we found the track, I was like, all right, we must be on the right path. So I think as researchers, once again, we got to always look at, we get so focused on one thing. Some people get focused on tree structures. Some people get focused on tracks. Some people get focused on tree bends. Some people get focused on wood knocking all the time and howling and vocalizations, that we forget to take a step back and then be like, listen, we need to look at this as a whole thing. And then we're overlooking these small little tracks that may be out there. And for Footer Nation, I'm going to post that up into the chat because you won't be able to see it through here. But it's just things that we need to always, think about, because we forget these little things. Kind of like how I always forget my plaster material, like we were talking about, to actually cast tracks, and I constantly forget it at home. But it's just like, but these little things that we always have to bring to the table.
And when it comes to like juvenile Bigfoot tracks, it's almost the same exact criteria looking at them to determine if they're from a juvenile Sasquatch as you do with an adult, except for there are some exceptions now, because I have seen, and now I've not personally myself, I'll tell you, in 43 years of doing this and going out, I have never seen an actual baby Sasquatch track. I never have. I think this is only not because there's no such thing as baby Sasquatches, but because I think they are carried a lot.
Yeah,
so I think that's why you rarely find a baby Sasquatch track, because they're being carried most of the time.
Well, let's see if we can see this, because
the ones I have seen, like yours, is a little different. I think you would say enough to go, well, that's not a baby human print. And I have seen little baby ones that other people have gotten, small tracks, baby footprints, which look almost like it doesn't have an instep, but this big toe sometimes, the big toe is off to this side over here.
Yep.
And a baby
we hear about that.
And I think they grow into it, and as they grow, that toe becomes more or less. Yeah, it's less divergent. It becomes more in line with the rest of them as they grow. So I think that's sometimes why you find tracks like, well, how come that one looks like it could be from a baby chimpanzee?
Yeah.
No, because maybe that's the way their feet start out. I mean, I haven't seen any, but you'd be able to tell. I mean, that is the other thing I also want to stress. If you find a big footprint or even, whatever out there, and it's, toes and everything, if you see a arch in it, it's not a Bigfoot track. It's just a very big person going barefoot. I've never seen a Bigfoot track of any sort that had any kind of a arch in it like we leave. None, ever.
No, I haven't either. And it won't let me upload the photo in the chat. So let me see if I can show it here for people to actually see it. Let's see if I can show it. Can you see it right there? If I do it right there. So you see the toes, right?
Oh, yeah. I see, right there. Yeah.
So
see, that's a very...
I see the toe impressions really well.
Yeah, and this is, once again, this is a very small baby track that I found in my research area, okay? The toes look just like the toes that you have on yours, okay? Now, it's funny because we're talking about...
they're almost like little peas in a pod.
Exactly. Now, we're talking about that toe, like how some of the ones we get that are extended. We do hear adults that are that way, too.
Yeah.
I've heard plenty. There's one researcher up north, Jeremiah, who has told me that his adults, I think if I remember correctly, one of them does have a toe that is out to the side. And we do hear like those weird, it's a different take on it, almost like a chimpanzee where they can grab the trees and climb up. So I'm curious, though, if that would be almost, when we do find ones with those toes, if that would be a different subspecies within the species, that for whatever reason, that set of Bigfoots do have that genetic code in them.
I was about to say, it could just be a genetic, some kind of genetic aberration, even almost.
Let me add a little something to that. I looked at that track, Gary, on the picture, and I was looking at it over and over and over. And the questions I would have for you analyzing that particular track was, one, the location. Where was the location of the track? How far deep were in the interior of the woods were you when you discovered that track? Second of all, when you look at juvenile bears, especially young black bears, their claws are not going to be on the ground. So they're going to have a lot of toe imprints. The difference between your track, Gary, as I looked at it, and looking at young black bear, is that your track is elongated on the rear and it's streamlined. So unlike a young black bear, which would be more padded towards the back and around formation, that tells me exactly that it is not a young juvenile black bear. Okay. Second of all, when you look at the width of the track and the size, because it's so small, if you're deep in the woods in the interior, what would be out there? There would not be no child or human present out there. So fortunately, that has to be something to really keep looking for and evaluating, because that is a track and that is living proof. So now I look at it, I keep going over and over, and I've been in the woods for a lot of years. I've seen tracks of every formation. I've seen kids tracks, people tracks, dog tracks, animal tracks, from different age animals and different weight animals. And even with a large size animals, you got to also realize too that just because something is 600, 700, 800 pounds doesn't necessarily he leaves you a track. A lot of animals that are cunning and smart and elusive become light-footed. They know how to walk on them leaves without leaving a sign. But the thing I learned about tracking is I could look at the foliage and you won't see a track, but I can see the track movement within the foliage, because I study the leaves on how the leaves are formed on the ground. I can see disturbance, a crime scene. I could see different patterns on the ground. I learned that because I was always tracking animals and trying to figure them out and trying to look for one particular animal, and you started developing good habits. And I'm still learning, no matter how, I don't care how long I've been in the woods, I'm still learning every day. I'm
Yep.
no professional better than anybody here. But when it comes to wildlife, that's my thing, you know. And as a hunter, a trapper, and an outdoorsman, that's basically what I do. Now, when you look at certain tracks, as you discussed, Joe, you know, every track is different. So same like people, you know, you have different formations of foot sizes, the width, the girth, and the
Mhm.
when how you walk. You know, if a Sasquatch is walking, he steps over a tree, he might put more counterweight on the right side, or is he a left side? Is he
Right.
left-handed or right-handed? You
Right.
know, is if he's huge on the top end, if his body structure from above here is bigger than his lower half, he's going to have what we call top heavy, which means that when he steps forward, that's where you get the deep imprint dentation towards the front because he's walking on a heavy gait forward because he can't balance himself out. The same thing as you look at bear. A bear's rear end is always higher than his front end. So when he's putting a lot of pressure, you see more on the front because the front is lower. But at the same time, the bear, when he's walking in the back, his stride on the back is longer than his front. So he tends to bring that rear leg almost all the way up to the front. So when you look at a Sasquatch walking, you know, you have to take measurements of the stride because if you see like is it a 5 foot stride, 6 foot stride, 7 foot stride, and then how deep is it? So now you look at the distance of the stride, then you kind of calculate how deep it is, how many inches, and the width of the track to determine how much the body weight of this animal or creature might be. So the same thing with like if you're hunting deer or like if I look at a white-tailed deer, everybody sees deer tracks, but do you know that a 4-inch deer track, an 8-inch deer track long on the front two hoofs determines on how old he is on the different years, you know, and also if you look at the bucks, like in a white-tailed deer, they have the dew claws, and you'll see the difference in the track compared to that of a doe. You know, and if you look at
Right.
the hoofs on the front, they tend to split wider as the animal gets older and heavier. So now it's heavier. So think about an animal like Sasquatch. A juvenile Sasquatch is going to probably be very light-footed, very
Mhm.
smooth. To catch or find the track of a juvenile is pretty much impressively and almost impossible because it's very rarely seen because either, like you said, they're very light, they bounce around, you know, they
Yeah,
cover more distance than the
I
parent.
haven't seen a whole lot of them.
So
I
what
haven't seen a
Gary
whole
has
lot of them
there
in
is
all my
very,
years.
very puzzling because it's
Gary
not
Gary
a bear
has
track.
that one. Gary has is almost one of the only ones I've ever seen of a juvenile. I mean, there's been other people that have actually I've seen some very credible people with casts of smaller Sasquatch, but very very rare. I mean, not a lot of them. Most people have either juvenile or adult sized castings most of the time. And what you were saying about the tracks and studying, I mean, there's a lot you can tell from a track. Now, I mean, as far as Bigfoot, you can tell, you know, not just like, okay, that's a Bigfoot track. You can tell a lot from the track if you study it. Like, you can tell what the animal was doing at the time it left that track, whether it was walking or whether it was running. A
Right.
lot of times I've seen it to where, and it befuddled me for a long time until I finally understood what was going on. I have found tracks at times where I would get a really good impression from about here, from about here up, and not so much back here where the heel is, but pretty good from about midfoot all the way up. And I was thinking, am I seeing bear tracks? Well, until I realized, no, they weren't bear tracks because I have seen bear tracks. I know what bear tracks look like. This was indicating I didn't realize that Sasquatch was actually running
Right.
because when they
Well,
run, they don't necessarily, as I said, the front part of the foot is used for propulsion. I mean, it drives them forward. So when they're running, a lot of times the only part of the foot that's actually making contact with the ground that much is this front part where they put all their weight onto it. And so the
right.
heel is a lot less defined in a situation like that. And it took me the longest time to realize, well, man, you're missing a whole lot of stuff that you're seeing in these tracks. Like if you see tracks going up a hillside or up an embankment, you can tell a lot of what that Sasquatch was doing at the time he was leaving those tracks. If you study him well enough, you know.
See,
Um,
I think one of the biggest mistakes a lot of researchers do is that they're most likely studying the mobility of the animal on the animal's movement, instead of studying exactly what's happening in that scenario. And what I mean by that is, if I find a set of tracks, I'm not going to go and follow it to where exactly the animal's going. I'm going to backtrack that. And I want to know where this animal came from, where was his last location, where was his feeding. Because if he's a Sasquatch, there's most of the time, I believe, just like human beings, we become so involved with our environment that we never actually leave it. We always come back to where we started, whether you went to the same store when you went to, or you went to the local park, or you go somewhere. You always go back some point in your life to an area back and forth, whether you got to go get something to eat. So I want to know, where is this animal bedding down? I want to know, where is he coming from? And a lot of times, most trackers, the biggest mistake is when you follow a track, once that animal picks you up, he's going to backtrack and do a horseshoe, 90-degree horseshoe, come right from behind you. And Gary emphasized this on his last video, and we've talked about this before. Animals study you as you study them. When they feel threatened, or they feel being pushed or being watched, they're going to do so many different oddities on the field that's going to surprise you. And while you're looking for them, they're actually watching you. So, and the problem with us humans is we're all sloppy on how we walk and approach our environment. I talked to Gary about the step and crotch method that I use. I catwalk through the woods, all right? So what I do is I put a big pair of wool socks over my boots so I can be as quiet as possible. And then when I'm still walking, I walk 10 feet, 15 feet, stop, look around. I stay paused for at least 10 to 20 seconds looking around first. Then I walk, that. But when I start to get an eerie feeling, or I feel something, or I see something in a distance, I'll walk 5 or 6 feet, stop, and then drop to the ground real quick. And then I let a little slow whistle. And then I stop and I stay down low. And a lot of times an animal gets confused. They say, wait a minute, something was stalking me. I saw him, and then he started to pound away, and suddenly he stopped. I don't hear him. He disappeared, and I hear a whistle. He picks up his head. He makes the mistake of making that motion where I will be able to pick him up and figure out exactly where he's at, where he's going, and let him make the mistakes. There's always an old saying, never hunt the animal, let the animal hunt you. Even like in a research, you have a campsite in a group, you don't need to go venture 300 miles into the interior. Sometimes just sitting around a campsite and conducting the way of curiosity, because remember, every animal has a curiosity scent and a curiosity sense that they want to know what's going on. Every time you sit in a campfire, you don't know how much critters are looking at you. How I know that? I was at a group of guys, survivalists, training up in the mountains, and they all sat at their campsite. I decided to stay away from them. I went deep into the woods, up on the highest ridge you can find, watching the whole campsite, all camoed out, in my ghillie suit, all souped up, buried in the ground, watching everybody. I stood point so I could keep an eye on the camp for safety reasons. While everybody was talking and yippity-yapping, I was watching game walking around them. They didn't even realize it. When they went to bed, guess what? There was raccoons walking all around them. I was laughing my ass off. I says, we make, even in the field, as doing research, we make a lot of mistakes. And when you're looking for tracks, there's so many different things to look for. And what I want to say to all you readers and people that are watching this video, when you want to submit a track to Gary or even put one up on this page, please keep a tape measure with you, a pen and paper, take measurements, always take a picture of the track close up and then from a distance, and always show the next tracks up in front of you. Because the reason we want to understand is we want to recognize that particular track, because the next time you go in the field and you happen to pick up on another track, a similar track, is it the same animal? There's got to be contours in the footpad. Like your hand, in the middle of your hand, you have all these little lines. Same thing in the bottom of your feet, you have little lines. And you have different dentations and different contours on your foot and heel, because that's the way you're developed as a human or as a creature or as an animal. Every animal imprint, even if it's the same animal, is never the same. So
that's the other thing I was going to say, just what you just brought up, William. That's another thing about whether somebody's trying to fool with you about tracks on Bigfoot. That's the other thing that you should always look for, especially if you're in some kind of like mud. Always look
Exactly.
for ridges, dermal ridges. They will show up, especially if
Exactly.
it's in a soft strata. There will be dermal ridges that will show up, and those are one of the things. And sometimes you got to look real hard for them, but they're there. And with a Bigfoot, instead of ours, if you look at our feet, ours run across our foot. Bigfoots, they run along the sides of the foot. They're different. They're dermal ridges, but they'll be there, you know, in an actual track that you're looking at. Sometimes you can even get them. And now this one, I can't. I mean, maybe if I had a magnifying glass, but sometimes a cast won't even pick them up. You know, so what you have to do is, you know, you have to study it beforehand before you even cast it. Look for those. And some casts do pick them up. I've seen casts that actually have dermal ridges. There's that guy Jimmy Chilcutt. He's worked for the cops. He was a forensic. He's a primate footprint specialist, and he knows about all the dermal ridges and stuff. And I was seeing a thing on him studying a cast, and he was saying how, you know, and that he could see the dermal ridges, and that they were like very much like primate dermal ridges. So yeah, so that's the one thing you pointed out there, William. Yeah, they do. You know, that's another thing to look for.
And
A
another
wooden cutout is not going to have those dermal ridges, or most of the time, I would say, you know, a faked footprint is not going to have those dermal ridges. That would be almost incredibly impossible for a hoaxer to incorporate into a footprint.
You know, one of the things I also want to bring out and to everybody's attention is that for those who've never seen a Bigfoot track, you know, study wildlife tracks on, you know, in the snow or in your own. You start to develop a lot of good habits of trying to read them and what's going on. Where did the animal go? Why was he there? You know, I like to do a little tougher situation because I've been doing it for so long, and I do what we call finding the invisible track. You know, I like to go in the area where you swear there is no track, and I can find an actual runway or movement through these leaves and even a blade of grass that's just slightly bent, a blade of grass, not because it's windy or rainy or because it's snowing from the night before, but because something went through there and they were so cat-like, very stealthy. You have nothing. The only that gave away this animal's presence was the fact that every time he walked through the high goldenrod or you know, in the swamp, he always tapped a branch or he rubbed against a tree, or he might have just barely moved some of the goldenrod a little. You'll see like almost like a gateway in between that. You know, if you look at a rock wall, stone wall fences or old rock areas, sometimes you'll see a stone that's overturned, that's lighter, and yet the other stones are darker because they've been sitting there for so long. So something disturbed that rock area or that stone. You know, the trackless track is something that takes time and skill to do, especially if you're a hunter, because sometimes you'll hit game and then the game is bounding 6-7 foot bounds or running at extreme speeds that they don't even leave a blood trail. So you have to figure out a lot of different things on this animal's movement, you know. So it's tricky. Tracking is just as an art. It takes a lot of years and experience, and you know, just sometimes just when you think you got it right, nature proves you wrong. Yeah, so you have to be open-minded. That's what a team is for. Yeah. You know, when Gary goes out or when we get together, we're going to look at different situations, different scenarios, and try to pick up what is and what is not. We are flesh and blood people, but evidence, the key to evidence is understanding what you're looking for and making you know, an answer to what is happening at that particular time and then. But here's the thing. If you're tracking a Bigfoot, in my opinion, you know, I haven't found a Bigfoot track. I found every track you could think of. I've seen tracks bears made. You swear they were human. But the
I've
thing
been fooled by
that,
double bear prints before.
Yeah, I had bears backtrack. I told
Gary that it was a Sasquatch track, but the more I studied it, I finally picked out the little telltale signs that showed me that now it was a bear that stepped in his own track.
Yeah,
and they do that quite often.
I had game walk around me. I had a fox jump on my chest because I decided to lay down behind a log and do some turkey calling. And I seen the tracks of the fox coming around the swamp, and I had a feeling he was going to horseshoe. So I lay down and I started calling a bird, and sure enough, he jumped over the log, landed on my chest, and freaked out, and he took off running. You know, I've had deer touch my nose when behind a tree. I got so close up to them and had them turn their face and just touch me on the nose. But see, nature teaches you so much because you from everything from not only just tracking, but camouflaging your human odor, understanding how they react in their environment, put yourself in a situation to become stealthier than them. Use your mind and pay attention to what's going on in your surroundings. You know, and even in nature, as a hiker and a tracker or whatever it may be, there's a lot of danger out there. Watch out for rattlesnakes, what we call widowmaker trees that are all hanging up in the air that'll fall right on you at the given moment. You know, you have to be a master of your environment as well. Sometimes just sit out in the woods by yourself and scan things out and study, write things down and take note. But when you find a Bigfoot track, take a lot of pictures of it and everything, because what happens if another week later you find another set of track? Was it the same creature walking? Can you have a track comparison from last year to next year to see if it's the exact same animal? Every animal and every creature out there, I believe, has different weight distributions and size and matter, and they all react differently. We like our right-handed, left-handed, so they are as they walking gait or their behavior. You see tracks. Is there any other things other than tracks? Is there broken branches? Is there scat? Is there hair samples? Is there anything that they ate they might have left behind? You know, there's a lot of questions and stuff that we have to find out, and some of us have answers for it. A lot of it, we don't have answers for it. And this is why we're here today. But the track teaches a lot. I mean, I can't sit here and explain for hours different things, but it's science in itself, you know.
Yeah.
But this is why we're together, because we need to see what's out there in New York State. And when we do an expedition with Gary, and Gary's going to put the team together, and when we go out, I'm not going to sit there to play games. I need to find evidence. I need to see what's out there. We need to find, and as we're there together, we teach each other different things, and we explain to stuff on the field. We work together as a family unit, and this is what I want everybody that's in the Bigfoot Society page or the Ambassador page or whatever, is when you get in touch with Gary, send them pictures, but try to get more of an analyze that what you're looking at more and give us more proof. You know, sometimes you get pictures that are blurry. Sometimes you get pictures that are try to get a good photo, take a tape measure, put it down on the ground, get the measurement from the inside and the outside as well, and the length. And then I want you to give a picture of the area and the general area. What's in there? Is there swampland? Is it farmland? You know, is it near houses? What is the community aspects of that area? We need to know, because why would it Squatch be there? You know, is he just traveling because he's going from state to state, or in the mountains coming down because the winters are hard and they got to come down to feed in the lowlands? Is it because it's summertime or wintertime? Do they den up? We don't know. These are things that we do. I hunt bear a lot, so there's a big whole thing on bear hunting. It's really tricky, and you know, I get close to them a lot, and I have a lot of pictures of them, and you know, it's you'd be surprised, almost human-like, to the point that when you look at tracks, it kind of fools you. But you get a trained eye because you're watching them all the time. Same thing like Gary. Gary could go out there and look at something and know if it's a Bigfoot track. Now, he's been on the field. You know how many times I put up a picture, Gary will say, hey, this is what it is. And guess what? Before the whole viewers got a chance to answer it, Gary already gave me the answer. Well, so that shows me that his skills, he's up to par. Right. And same thing like you, Joe, being in the field. The same thing like Mike and all the rest of the, right. Everybody shares.
I mean, and that's what other people out there that have to understand, especially if they're like just like thinking about going out. You know, these are not going to be the kind of footprints you're going to be finding. I'm sorry, you're just not. And I will say that at least 75%, at least in my experience, 75% of the tracks that I find that I know that are Bigfoot, a lot of times you're not finding this. A lot of times they're just impressions, you know, but you can, and so with an impression, I don't care how good you are, with an impression, the only problem with when you're not finding these, with the impressions, you can say, yeah, because of my experience and things I've seen, blah, 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 this is a Sasquatch impression. This is a Sasquatch impression. let's not even call it a track, because technically it's really not a track. It's an impression of where the foot, like in grass, or something like that. Now you can tell, but even with all your experience, even when it comes to impressions like that, I can't 100% say Sasquatch track.
Exactly.
And that's what a lot of them are going to be, is they're going to be those impressions instead. You're not always going to find those little, like that really good one, the juvenile one that he found, that Gary found.
What do you think, Gary?
You're not always going to find that.
No, I agree with you guys.
But with experience and knowing what you're looking for, just like you say, William, knowing what you're looking for, that's going to tell you, and that's going to be like, okay, this is it. And if you're in doubt, always, send it to somebody, but always have that. If you don't have a tape measure, use something in the picture for reference, size reference,
Yeah, some people use dollar bills. Some
use
people
dollar bill, exactly.
I break sticks sometimes, and all sorts of your
Mm-hmm.
cell phone, whatever. I mean, whatever you have, just kind of MacGyver it. I mean, like I say,
always put something in for scale.
Yeah, none of us are perfect. What I do with a track, and we're going to answer 2 questions and end this segment, but what I do with a track is, when I get one, I square it off. I make a right angle and square the toes off with the side of it, and then I take the picture. That gives me the width of it, and that gives me the length of it. So I have a right angle. I understand what the track is. You at least can then, visualize it a little bit better. But I agree, a lot of these tracks are just impressions. We see them all the time in the grass. You're not going to get those nice mud prints that are the nice snow prints, but that we want. So, all right, I got 2 questions up in the chat room, and I want you guys to answer, and then we're going to get out of here and let the paranormal people come in. So,
you got it.
First one we got is, Joe, this might help you, and same thing with Will. What's the best plaster to use when casting?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm old school, so I still go with just your regular run-of-the-mill plaster of Paris that you can buy at any craft store. But a lot of people swear on hydrocal. And I've heard a lot of people use hydrocal. I haven't heard anything bad about it. And I'm pretty sure it works pretty much the same way that plaster of Paris does. So, but I'm just saying, I mean, when it comes to casting tracks, just your regular, you can buy a 1 pound box of it. Actually, no, it's they're 1 pound bags, and there's like 4 of them. You can buy like 4 pounds of plaster in a craft store. And plaster of Paris works just fine for tracks. And now, like I said, I'll do my one other little promotion on that. If you're doing snow prints, ta-da! Snow impression wax. That's very important. Because we know that hydrocal and plaster of Paris, they work on a chemical based thing when it's drying, so it creates heat. So if you're trying to pour hydrocal or plaster of Paris into a snow imprint, it's just going to melt it out wider, and it's going to totally ruin it. But if you put that in first and then do it, it picks up a lot better. So
you guys are probably going to laugh, but I use construction quick drying cement. That
works too. Yeah, that works
quick,
too.
So super fast. But also, many a times when I was doing a little bit of research on white-tailed deer, I would bring a candle with me, and I would take a candle, and I would bring a little small propane torch. And what I did was I'd melt the candle wax right onto the track, especially a dry track. It didn't work good on the sun, on snow, but on a muddy condition, on a mud track, or on a hard ground like sand or dirt, I was able to melt that candle wax right on the track. And then when it cooled off in 2 seconds, I was able to get an actual mold that's exactly the way that track is. And it gave me a chance to take that mold and then lay it in a block of plaster of Paris and then make the track and make a duplicate of it. That's something I tried, and it worked out pretty well. Most people don't do that often. But I think, I never tried plaster of Paris. I just found it taking too long to dry. And I needed something that's going to be quick. So maybe like a fast drying type of cement that's light.
You can actually get quick drying plaster of Paris in a craft store.
Okay.
That's what I have. Is it's quick. It says it right on the box. Quick drying plaster of Paris. So
cool.
Any other questions?
Gary? This one's a good one. This is from our buddy Mike. And this is a good one. He says this is his favorite question. He goes, have you ever tried food coloring to maybe see more detail? So putting food coloring in a track. That would, I mean, would that be more for snow tracks?
Well,
maybe.
Now, do you mean in the track or on a
problem with
cast?
that is that the ground is dirt, and a lot of times with earth, it tends to absorb the dyes and everything. You can actually color the track inside, but how long is it going to last? The problem with that is, like you said, the moisture condensation on the ground. Is it going to absorb the dye or any kind of liquid that you put in there? It might even disrupt or destroy the track itself. So we don't want to do that. I think you can do it to leave a marker near the track or maybe around the track or something, but I wouldn't recommend it because we're trying to find evidence, not destroy it. And I'm just saying that because a lot of times people try to, even with plaster, if you don't know how to place it on right, you could literally destroy the track and get the wrong actual track itself because you put too much of it, too heavy, or you push it down and you might alter the track. Disturbance of the track is something that we don't want to do. So we have to take really serious precaution on how we're going to try to copy that. It's something that we got to think about.
Yeah, and I mean,
his idea about that though.
Go ahead.
His idea about that though makes sense if he meant it in a way that, and I'm not sure, but like if you take a casting, perhaps, I mean, like I think maybe that's what he means. I don't know if he means like in the actual track itself,
or looking for dermal ridging.
Food coloring to bring out dermal ridges.
Well, that's a possibility. That might work. If you're mixing it with the plastic.
I've never thought about it, but hey, that doesn't sound like.
What do you think, Gary?
I mean,
I guess it depends on what your, casting is made out of.
I mean, it might work. It may not. It's, I can tell you I've destroyed tracks because of plaster. I have. I mean, when I was learning to do it, and honestly, I'm not no professional at that stuff. I'm not no art person. So, I mean, plaster and all that, when it comes to, it's an art. It's a real art in itself doing that stuff. And we never know how that's going to come out of a track. We just don't know. You can be really good at it and you still screw up. So,
this is one that's been falling apart. This is one that's been falling apart slowly but surely because I just didn't do it right, and I took it in a very swampy area.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And
there's a whole piece missing here. That's like a toe. It's all gone now.
Okay, and he just finished his question. He said, this is going to be the last of it before we get out of here. He says he goes mix it into the UltraCal first. So he's saying mix the food coloring.
That might work. We'll give it a try. It's something to look into. Every reader here has something that we need to look at and maybe even try and address. We have an opinion because of what we've done, but believe it or not, a lot of you guys have a lot of good secrets and good things that we can try for you. Maybe submit some information to Gary. Gary, we could take that on the field and give it a try and try some of your experiments. It doesn't hurt to try.
No, Mike, what we'll do, man, is we'll try it and then we'll get back to you and see how it works for us.
Exactly.
You may be onto something cool, and if it works, great. And if it doesn't, who cares? We tried it.
It's like a discovery. Everything is a discovery.
But it may work for the dermal ridging. So I mean, we can definitely try it with that. Yeah. The only problem with the plaster itself, I'm just curious on how it's going to react to the plaster. So we don't know till we try. So. All right, guys.
One last question I want to answer there, Gary, is Thomas Dowd asked about finding hair. I found hair on trees before. He was asking if anybody had found hair on trees or brush or anything. And
Okay, awesome. Well, guys, I mean, this was great. This is so much information on tracks. That's what we were here for. And I hope, Twitter Nation, I really hope that you took something in. Yeah. I know it's a lot of dry stuff that we're talking, but tracks are our main evidence right now. When people come to us and say Bigfoot doesn't exist, you guys are crazy out in the woods doing all this whooping and tree knocking or whatever the hell we do. At the end of the day, there's enough circumstantial evidence to bring forth when we find these tracks in the woods, the ones that Joe showed, the picture that I showed, things like that, to say that this is plausible that Bigfoot exists. And I mean, all of us here, we understand that it does exist, but what we're saying to the skeptics. All right, Joe. Any last words?
Nah, just anybody that's doing it, and I don't know. I just kind of fell into the whole track thing myself. It just seemed natural to me. Again, like you said, Gary, because it's one of the biggest and most found pieces of evidence of them. So anybody that's out there, just keep trying. I mean, you're not always going to find them, and you're going to find a whole bunch you might think is, and you're going to find out they really aren't. But just keep doing it, man. And the more you do it, the more you look for it, the better you're going to get at it eventually.
Yeah.
And I am going to put in a plug for Dr. Jeff Meldrum, because if you get his book, Science, Sasquatch and Science Meets, Legend, in there is just some really good information about Sasquatch tracks and etc. Study all that kind of stuff. I mean, if you're interested in tracks like me, I mean, I'm just like super interested in them. So I've studied a whole lot about them, and that's part of it. It's not just going out to look for them. You got to go and see what some of these other experts have done, and the information and data they've come up with, and study that too, so that you just get better and better at it, man.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Well, I want to say something real short and quick. I just want to thank all you readers and people here on this show, and many more that are coming aboard. I want to thank you for being here and watching us. If you find any tracks and you're not sure of something, please submit them to Gary and I. If you find any evidence or any reports within your area in the New York State or in the Hudson Valley region or whatever, contact Gary. He would send his team, any of us, if it's Sullivan County, Ulster County, Gary will get in touch with me. I'll take a look and check out the area and see what we can find along with your help or whatever, You guys, I just want to thank you for putting in your time and being here and supporting us. But we're a serious group, and if it's out there, if we're going to find it, we'll find it. If we can't find it, we're going to keep looking. All right. Thank you guys for being on the show.
Awesome. All right. So we're not going away. We're going to be bringing in the paranormal crew. But that was the end. I mean, this is the flesh and blood side of it. Tracks, those kind of things, tangible things in the woods that we find. That's why we stay on the flesh and blood side of these kind of things. But like you say, the NYBS and the ambassadors were a mixed bunch of people. So without further ado, guys, it was great, and I will have you back, and I will talk to you on the back side.
No,
take care, guys.
All right. Keep it squatchy. Deuces. All right, everyone. So now I'm going to be bringing in the paranormal crew. And let's one by one get them in here. So just bear with me here. Dun, dun, dun. Here they all come. Diane's here. Mike's here. Carnan is here. Rachel is here. Oh, man, I got more of you people here. All right. So hold on. We're going to stop here because you got to get the intro. It's not fair that they just get the intro and you guys don't get the cool intro. You know what I mean? I got to keep it even here. So let's see. Footer Nation, let's get to work. And now we welcome back our paranormal crew. I mean, I got to give you the intro, man. I mean, it's not fair that the Flesh and Blood guys get all that stuff and you guys don't get that. Come on. So,
Special.
you're unspecial. Special. You're a weird kind of special. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
But all right, so Footer Nation, now we bring in the paranormal side. As you know, Project X brings all different researchers throughout the state of New York talking about the Bigfoot phenomena as a whole. You know, I got Mike from Long Island Bigfoot, my brother from another mother. We got Rachel and Carden, the duo. They're you can't separate them. They come as a package. And then we have Diane, the gifting queen from Dutchess County, who the stuff that she gets is absolutely amazing. Now, they're a little bit different on the sides of the Bigfoot phenomena, where, you know, myself, Will, and Joe, you know, we take the flesh and blood side of Bigfoot. We believe it's a living and breathing creature. This group of people now look at Bigfoot as a spiritual thing, as an interdimensional possible thing, maybe even a little bit of alien, maybe. So we have to now, you know, look at this from a logical standpoint, but also look into, you know, the paranormal side, because so many people come to us and say, well, Gary, you know, I saw a Bigfoot and it vanished, or the tracks have now disappeared. Like that doesn't make logical sense. I don't have an answer for that. Even though I'll all day be flesh and blood and be like, all right, you know, yada, yada, yada. I don't know what to say to that stuff. So that's where we bring these ladies and guys in. All right, Mike, we're going to start with you as always, because you're the boots on the ground out in Long Island. So what do you think is the paranormal, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like the coincidences of why you think Bigfoot may be paranormal and not so much a tangible flesh and blood creature?
It's basically just because of what I've experienced. You know what I mean? Like I don't like necessarily go out there with anything. Every single time I go out, even though things I've encountered, I still go out every single time with a blank slate. So I've just experienced things that have led me to the point where I've seen way too much for it to just be, you know, I can't say it's not maybe some kind of distant hominoid, like some missing link that maybe we lost some kind of contact that they have abilities of, like telepathy, etc. You know, it could be that. I don't ask the big questions anymore. I learned that would just drive you crazy. But, you know, I've seen a lot, like I've heard a lot. I've heard mind speak. I've seen these types of things where, you know, people call it cloaking. I don't know if it's cloaking. Like when I hear cloaking, I think of Harry Potter, like throwing like, you know, his cape on, like to me, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I do like the word. It's a fun word. I don't know, like, but you know, it's, you know, I think it's like I still go to the word, like I use the word because it's common. I use the word like cloak net, but it's almost like a parallel, like that they can kind of like either step into our world, whether it's through portals, whether it's through, I'm not 100% sure how they do it, but I think that's why we find tracks that stop dead. I think that's why we hear them. We don't see them always. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they're just pulling like this invisibility move. Like I can't snap fingers for my life, but I don't think they're pulling like an invisibility move, like poof, I'm gone type thing. You know, I think it's more of like like an alternate parallel. You know what I mean? Like if that makes sense.
Yeah. So to kind of sum it up in easy terms, you almost feel like a Bigfoot is walking side by side with us. So like even though like we're in our real dimension, it's almost like they're in the parallel dimension next to us. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Diane.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
go ahead. I want to make sure we're getting it right. So is that kind of?
Oh, sorry. I mean, they've come like they. No, really, like it's actually funny you say that because I feel like they have walked next to me, like literally, it's like walk next to me with me, but they're not physically, you know, not physically there. And you know, like some people say maybe it's something else, but like I feel it. You know, I've come to realize they've been in my house, and I don't know how you do that without opening a door, without putting it into a paranormal, like some kind of paranormal aspect.
Yeah. I mean, that would make sense. So, Diane, I know you also believe in the spiritual side. I think you're a flesh and blood person with us a little bit, but I think, like, you know, you do. I see you talk about the spiritual side of the Bigfoot. What do you think a Bigfoot, like, spiritually is? Like, what is it? What have you witnessed with something like that?
I don't know. I think that they read our intentions. They can tell how we react to what we see, and if they want to, they'll connect more to you. I've had a lot of experiences through dreams, and sometimes I'm just walking. Like the other day, I went walking and I noticed the trees that were, you know, a tree structure, which I was just talking to somebody, and I said, I see so much, but I've never seen any tree structures really. And sure enough, I go out and what do I see? Big tree structure. So I think I believe in mind speak, and I think it's something that's normal. I think we have it, but we just don't use it. I mean, many times I'm sure people have said they're thinking about a friend they haven't seen in a long time, and then all of a sudden that friend calls and said, oh, I was just thinking about you. I mean, is it coincidence, or did you share something with them that came through?
Yeah.
And that's what I think they do. And maybe women are more, you know, acceptable to this, but they've led me to most of the places where I've found all my evidence. And that's how I see them, as something special, not just big apes.
Yeah, and and as I even say, like, I do agree with the mind speak as far as, like, I don't really tell the story, but you know what, I might as well, because this is a paranormal weirdness and it's crazy. But there was a time where I think way back, we're going like 2010, between 2010 and 2012, I did have an encounter with something. And what I mean by that is we were at a camp, we were doing Bigfoot research, we were trying to draw the Squatches into us. All right. I went outside of camp. We were doing teams. So we had one team over here, one team over here, one team at camp. Long story short, went a little bit outside of camp, and somehow in my mind, I saw a female and a small one together. Now, I can't explain it, but I know what I saw in my head. Now, I don't know if it was because I was, like, you know, thinking about it, or if it was, like, you know, it was already pre-put in my head. I don't know, but all I can say is I did see this, and the female was staring at me. As she was walking down the creek bed and she was staring at me, I couldn't move. Like, I was completely frozen. And then I saw her turn her head and just pay me no mind and keep going. I'm not even lying. The minute that happened mentally, boom, snap. I snapped right out of it. So I don't know, like, I did have that experience, and that's the truth. And I can just leave it at it was the experience. But maybe there is something to this mind speak type telepathy thing that that in the flesh and blood Bigfoot field, we call infrasound. Right. So maybe in you know, when we talk about infrasound, it may be very similar to almost what mind speak is in a way of a spiritual way. Yeah, it is. It's something that it's one of those weird things that did happen to me out in the field, and I'm not gonna, I need to talk about it, but I don't share it with many people because, once again, it's one of those things that, because I'm on I'm on the real side of Bigfoot, the flesh and blood side, I don't put that in, but it did happen, and people do have those experiences in the woods. So I did have that experience. Yeah. So Wonder Twins, now it's your up. So, do you guys want? All right, so recently you guys were boots on the ground out in the woods. You know what I mean? Like, one awesome thing about all of us here is that we put the time out in the woods. Mike's out in the woods all the time. We're all out in the woods all the time. Boots on the ground. That's the only way we learn while we're out into the field of Bigfoot research. So you two are greenhorns in the Bigfoot world. So this is all new to you. Do you guys want to, you ladies? I'll say guys, ladies, the Wonder Twins. Do you want to tell us like what was your experience when you guys went into the? I keep saying guys, ladies, we're out into the woods like recently. Like what? Tell us about it.
Well, I know we went out to the one side and both of us felt nothing. And since we're both empaths, we can feel everything. And, we went to the other side of the woods and just both of us immediately felt a different energy shift. And as we got further and further in on the trail, we just, both of us were feeling different things. I know I get pressure in my head when there's a different energy or something's trying to communicate with me. I know Karnan was feeling different things as well. And we were playing the music. So that's when we both were playing native music and we both felt very just like something was watching us in the woods. We couldn't describe what it was, but there was definitely something with us.
Yeah, and the area that we went to, it's outside of Albany County, and there's many sightings there. So, like I said, like Rachel said, we went to one area just to check it out for ourselves, felt nothing. And then we went over to this other area where there were sightings, and it was an immediate shift of energy. Also to note, when we got to a certain area on the trail where sightings were noted, to go play the music, like my phone wouldn't work at all. So there was a disruption in electronics, which is super common in the paranormal. So yeah, I mean, we really felt like we were being watched. It was like something was staring at us. It was cool.
Yeah, and it's cool that you said about the being watched, because actually I just got off. I did a radio show earlier today out in California. I was a guest on a show, and the guy that was interviewing me was talking about this exact thing, the feeling of being watched in the woods. One of the main things a lot of people talk about in the Bigfoot, and people that have encounters, is that they have the feeling of being watched. Which, think about it, and this is how I explain it, and you guys can, you ladies, because we lost Mike, you ladies can fill it, you can fill this in, is that, like, that's the sixth sense I like to say that kicks in. That's our intuition that kicks in. You don't even have to be in the woods. Think about, like, if you're in the mall or somewhere that's busy and you feel someone staring at you, or the gym and someone's staring at you, you can feel that. Like it's like a unnerving feeling that you turn around and then you actually you see the person staring at you. Like I'm sure everybody's had that feeling, had that experience in life, this in general. So now let's move that to the woods. Now the woods is a place that we're not, like, even though we enjoy the woods, we're not masters of the woods. We're not masters of our environment. Like the woods is like kind of out of bounds for us, even though we go out there, we have a good time and stuff, but it's outside the realms of a lot of what we can do as humans. So what do you think that is when people are having that, like, being watched feeling? Like, do you think that it's, is that like a gut feeling? Or do you think, like we talk about mind speak, like Diane was talking about mind speak, do you think that could be something, and I'm not even just talking Bigfoot, do you think it could be like energy? Could it be something that's out there that's causing our spidey senses, quote unquote, to kind of go off?
I personally feel like it's something out there. I would like to think that with my experience in the paranormal, knowing that feeling of something watching us, usually we then have like a response with an interaction of some sort of energy or whatever. I personally feel like it's something that's interacting with us. It's something that's there, energy or not, but something is, there. As opposed to like a mind speak, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I agree, because, we talk about how our body changes, you get those chills and, you feel nauseous. If some different kind of energy is around, you can just feel it. And it's like it's a gut feeling. So.
What do you think, Diane?
Yeah, it is. It is a gut feeling. And it's there. It's, you don't know where it's coming from, but it's definitely watching you and giving you its energy. And then things happen. Sometimes they lead you somewhere, you know you're in the right place, and hopefully, you know, they'll try to interact with you somehow, somewhere down the, you know, down the line.
Yeah, and it's like, and then, you know, like Mike was saying, like, you know, you have the where he feels that they even go home with him on a level like he'll be home and they're in his house. Now, you know, the question I have when I hear stories like that, and is now, are we talking about a Bigfoot now that can go wherever, or are we talking about something else that may be out in the universe somewhere? It could be any kind of, and I'm not even talking about cryptid. It could be absolutely anything. That you say, like, we invite this thing in. We invite whatever it is in because we're out there doing the research. Think about that. Carter and Rachel, they're paranormal investigators, you know, with my team. So when we go into houses, you know what I say. The minute you start talking and trying to communicate, you're opening the door, correct? So what is the difference, though, if people believe that, you know, Bigfoot's paranormal, that they're out in the woods, we start doing whatever we do to make that communication, to open that door. How do we know that it's a Bigfoot, I guess, that's coming with us on that level? Is it like a feeling, or is it like, could it be something that we automatically make in our head because we have a perceived notion that that's what we're looking for? What do you ladies think?
I don't know. Maybe their energy comes home with us. I've read and I've heard from many people that they find gifts in the house, you know, things that weren't there that they attribute to Bigfoot. I mean, it's so many people that there has to be something to it. I've never experienced that, but like I said, I've had dreams that, I mean, I know they weren't really something I made up. I mean, it was very, you know, mind altering, but a lot of people believe that. I mean, I get gifts, but never at home or anywhere around my property, just in that one area. And I feel them there, and I've been led to different places along the trail where I wouldn't even look, and I find things. So, I mean, something is doing that. They give forth some kind of energy, and it might just be something that's natural that we've lost over the years.
And that's what we hear. A lot of people, you know, once again, we have, like we say, like back in, like Squatches have like, 9 senses. You know what I mean? That's what I say. Like how we have like the 6th sense. You know, I always kid that. Well, a Squatch has 9. You know what I mean? We've lost a lot of those things due to modern day life, technology, our living. But a creature in the forest would still have these survival instincts. Here's a question for all of you. And this is great because we talk about this all the time. Our buddy Mike, once again, what's going on, man? He talks about and he asks, we're talking about orbs. You know how that's actually what we're experimenting right now, right? So he goes, sometimes we see orbs of light, all right? He goes, have you ever had an orb move towards you or go around you like it has seen you? So what he's asking is, have we ever seen an orb that actually is coming at you, but then kind of goes around you because it knows you're there? This is for all of you. Because, I mean, we know what we see in the woods. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, in the woods, personally, no. I haven't experienced that as of yet. We're still really new, at least I am, in the woods. Paranormal aspect of Bigfoot in the woods. But I have had interactions with orbs, during paranormal investigations where it's like they come at you and it's like they avoid you, they go off elsewhere. I've never had one like go through me or anything like that. They usually veer off like they know you're there.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Well, you and I, Gary, were in the woods last week and or 2 weeks ago, and we've seen we both saw some type of light in the woods, and it's there and then it disappears. It doesn't really come near us or follow us or anything, but you definitely feel that energy. So something like an orb is there. So
Diane?
I see them in pictures, I've never really seen them around me, but I have seen them in the trees at night. There was one time I thought I saw eyes shine in a tree, and it looked like it. And I called my son. He came over, and we were looking, and we started moving closer. And that's when the smell hit me. I mean, it's strong. So I backed off. And then we were looking and we were taking pictures, and the whole tree lit up with orbs. And I just couldn't imagine what it was. I mean, I saw it with my own eyes. I have pictures of it, but that's the only time I've seen them with, personally, other than in pictures.
Yeah, and I mean, the answer, I have experienced orbs in the woods a lot. I'll tell you, here's another story I don't really tell many people about, but might as well since this is the weirdness. This is going back again. This is about 2014 to 16. I was once again in the wilderness up in the Bigfoot area, and we were coming up a mountain. We were actually trying to summit a small mountain. As we were going up the mountain, like about a quarter of the way up, there was this ball of light in the woods. Okay, when I say a ball of light, it was a ball of light. Me and the other person I was with, we were staring at it because it was so bright. Now, once again, we were out there hiking and doing stuff. We weren't out there trying to Bigfoot and things like that. We kind of debunk it. We're like, is it the moon? Well, the moon wasn't out that night. Okay, this thing lit up the woods to the point of we were staring at it that we thought someone was out there with a lantern. And then there was no other cars at the trailhead. All right. And once we kind of stared at it, we then went up a little bit further, but both of us were kind of rattled a little bit because we're like, well, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, is there a person in the woods that's going to follow us up the mountain now? Is there, what's going to happen? So we turned around and started coming back down the mountain because by then we were rattled. When we got to the same spot we saw it, it was gone. Okay. Now, was it methane gas? Probably not, because methane gas coming out of it's not going to create this light that looks like a full-blown lantern in the woods. All right. Is it swamp gas? We went through the list once again because we're very logical people. I can't once again explain that experience, but I know what I saw. Another time in our research area now, our main research area in the Adirondacks, we see orbs in the same exact spot where we know we have a family of Bigfoots. Is there a correlation with energy in Bigfoots in the same area? That's kind of where that's what we're doing in Project X. That's where we're, trying to get that data for everybody, But I do believe that there's a correlation with seeing orbs as far as an energy area, and Bigfoots and other animals are drawn to these highly, highly magnetic areas.
Yeah.
Because logically, that would make sense.
It would.
So we do see these weird orbs. I mean, we hear about it all the time. People seeing orbs in the woods. Yeah. So, and here's a question. This is nice. We'll do questions because everybody has questions when it comes to the paranormal. This is for all of us because we're learning as we go. I'm still learning as I go with this stuff. Boom. Here we go. Thomas Dowd. Tommy Oddity. This isn't the paranormal show. But, well, it kind of is. It is, I guess. So he goes, why do we think that certain interdimensional beings, clearly I can't type. So why do we think that there's certain interdimensional beings? So we got all these different beings that we say are interdimensional. Bigfoot. We hear this with Dogman, right? The Dogman. I personally believe if Mothman is actually real, okay, that Mothman would be an interdimensional being. Once again, it's not a living, breathing thing. It's not something that we, see all the time. We only see it here and there. So it would either be interdimensional or it would be extraterrestrial, in my opinion. The reason I always go Mothman to the alien theory is, once again, if you look at the ancient alien theory, if you believe in the ancient alien theory, they have winged humans chiseled in rocks all over the world. They're all over. All the cultures have winged humans. So if we put that into perspective, I would put Mothman into a possible alien type thing because they've been seeing this forever.
Right.
But we put Bigfoot and Dogman, some people put them in interdimensional. So why do you think that we put them into interdimensional? This is a good brainstorm. I mean,
Yeah.
because someone like me, I believe in the creature.
I don't believe they're interdimensional. That's my, my belief. I've never seen anything that really caused me to think that way, but a lot of people do. They've seen them disappear. I've seen something really strange on a video. I think I told you about it, that I saw something run from tree to tree, jumped from tree to tree, ran through the leaves and jumped on another tree. And it had the same appearance of Predator. You know that movie Predator, the wavy green lines he had? It had that same appearance. Now, I have no idea. And somebody was showing the video and they said they heard a baby Bigfoot howl. So, I mean, I don't know. But that was the strangest thing I've seen in the video that I can't explain.
That is strange. You know what I mean? And that's the thing is like people kind of put these two things together,
Yeah.
So Wonder Twins, what do you think about interdimensional things? Like, once again, I know this is brand new to you, but as a brand new researcher in the field, this is great for all the people that are in the chat room that may not do. You have interdimensionals, you have multi-dimensional portals, which, Mike just brought up. We have different things. Like, do you think that there's cryptids? You're not just saying Bigfoot. Do you think that there's cryptids, though, that people see that are interdimensional? And when I say interdimensional, that would be supernatural. That's more of a supernatural being.
I think that there's been too many accounts of seeing the same thing, across how many people to just discount that there's not. So I do personally think that there's cryptids, interdimensional beings. I'm not quite sure yet where I stand with how that falls with Bigfoot. I feel like I'm starting to make my own opinion between aliens and Bigfoot and the connection. But is it interdimensional or not? And then not to mention, I think Joe made a comment in here about like humans only using 10% of, their brains. And Tom and I talk about this quite often. So how many people are seeing things in the woods, anywhere? My cousin actually, was talking to me the other day about the elf thing. Like one of her friends had actually seen an elf, which she thought would have been an elf. But how many people have seen something like that? And, we're only using 10% of our brains. So, let's say another part's starting to awaken. I don't know how many things are in our dimension now walking around that I feel like we don't perceive it. It's not our reality at this point. Our brains can't process it. I'm not quite sure, but I definitely do think that there's, cryptids, interdimensional beings.
I agree. I mean, I know I'm just as new as Carnan to all this, especially to both the paranormal and the Bigfoot world, but I definitely think there's cryptoids in the woods. There's definitely, like Carnan said, her and I talked about the elves. We've even talked about fairies. I mean, there could be really anything in the woods. And especially because if, you're not open to it and you're afraid and living in fear, then you're not going to really open your mind to all these possibilities of these different things living in the woods.
Right. Like you don't allow your mind to perceive certain things. I feel like the more you open your mind and, you're willing to communicate and see those things, people end up, experiencing more.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's truth and let's be honest, there's truth in legend. So we talk about folklore, we talk about all these stories and legends, but there has to be some truth in in these legends. Whatever that piece of truth is, that's what our job kind of is, to find that out, which, that's why we research. But there has to be some truth to some of this stuff, from fairies to trolls to elves in the woods to all that stuff. And actually, the elves in the woods is a big New York thing. Like that, New York is known for little people in the woods. It's actually it's no more than Bigfoot in the woods. It's actually a big thing in New York. Here's another question. So this is a good one. And this is kind of a little bit different. Let me get it up here. Boom. Nadine from YouTube is asking, she goes, what is with the faces that the Bigfoot beings, and why does Bigfoot look like something so different before it fully appears? So, kind of almost like what Diane was just talking about. She was talking about like that someone saw like a predator, like the movie Predator, but then they heard a baby Bigfoot yowl, but they saw something that it almost morphed or some kind of thing. So we do hear these stories from time to time. Me personally, I haven't witnessed that. Like my 2 encounters with Bigfoot, it was a Bigfoot. Like even though the first one I really thought was a raccoon climbing the tree or a porcupine or something climbing the tree until it blinked at me, and then it put the fear of God in me when I realized it was a Bigfoot. But some people do say they start off one way and then look another. Maybe that's why we hear all these dogman stories. A lot of people think a dogman is really a Bigfoot. What do you ladies think about that? And once again, you guys are new, the two Wonder Twins. I know you're new. So, and this is a lot of weirdness. But use your imagination. Like, you hear us talk about it enough. So use your imagination.
Yeah, what's the other one? There's like Dogman, there's what is it? A skunk ape or something like that. I feel like there's so many different things that correlate with Bigfoot and like the experiences that people would have with Bigfoot, and it's all the same. I personally, and even before I started working with you guys on this stuff, I believe that they're all the same thing.
What do you think, Rach?
I mean, do you think maybe they could? What?
No, there's no right or wrong answer. So,
I mean, do you think maybe it could change forms? Like it could appear as like a dogman, but then appear as a Bigfoot to some people. Like maybe it depends on the people that are around if it changes form. Who knows?
I agree with that. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I think that it's all of the same being, I guess. I don't know. If a Squatch is able to change form, and we've had things like that, like Diane was talking about, I feel like I think it's all of the same being. It's probably changing form, but I don't think that they're like completely separate entities. I think they all are kind of connected in a manner.
What do you think, Diane?
I think there is a Dogman, but it could be an offshoot of Bigfoot. I mean, maybe somewhere along the line, it's like humans. We all look different from different countries, different parts of the world. Maybe they're a different breed of Bigfoot, but they definitely are around. I mean, so many people have seen them with the long snout, the ears, so it doesn't sound like Bigfoot. So I don't know. I've never seen one.
Yeah, when it comes to Dogman, I mean, let's be real. When you hear about Dogman, see, Dogman's the new cool thing now, honestly. Like, let's be real. Yeah. We haven't heard about Dogman really until a lot recently. And I feel like it's the new cool cryptid, because when you talk about Dogman, you talk about aggressive, scary stories. You don't ever really hear about a good Dogman encounter. You almost hear like, it almost tried to kill me and I got away. Well, if you got away, then it really wasn't going to kill you, because you wouldn't be here to tell the story. I mean, let's be real. I mean, that's if the story is going the way they're saying it. So here's another one. Yeah, it's a new buzzword. Mike said it perfectly. It is. It's a new buzzword. Here's another good question. We're talking about Bigfoot, and we're talking about what it could be from a paranormal standpoint. Why do some researchers consider Bigfoot, a Nephilim? So when we look at Bigfoot and the different things that Bigfoot possibly could be, where me personally, I put Bigfoot as its own species of creature, and I put it more on the human side of things. okay? Because it has it has human mannerisms. I mean, think about it. The way it communicates with us, it's kind of human the way it communicates with us by giving gifts, by communicating us through stick language, making different tree bends and structures. Those are human type behaviors that people do. Think about it. When we go into the woods, to survive, we make structures, right? We make shelter to survive. We give signs to make people follow us and things like that. They're very human-like behaviors. Communication is kind of human-like in some ways. So if we think about these things, that's the way I think about it. But then you have the Bible used to talk about Nephilim and things like that. Now we're getting into religious talk. Why do you think that some people actually consider it to be a Nephilim? And if you don't know what a Nephilim is, that's fine too. Just I don't even know. So, you know what I mean? Because not everybody knows what that is. But why do you think that they consider it to be something like that? Because now we're getting into like a religious type talk.
Well, there were giants mentioned in the Bible, and that's what people think that these Bigfoot are. They're part of them.
I'm not quite positive as to why people think that. It's not something I guess I've ever bothered looking into, because I've not looked into like a Nephilim. But I do have to say that my significant other, since I started doing all this, he likes to chat at work sometimes about like all the things I like to talk about. And there is somebody at work that compares Bigfoot to Nephilim. So I'm going to have to ask him to ask the question tomorrow. I don't know why. I didn't ask why, but I have heard a lot of people doing that. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I've never heard anybody compare it to a Nephilim, but I mean, I could see why, I guess, because they are supposedly giant beings, but I would have to agree with you, Gary, and think it's a separate species.
Yeah, I mean, when we hear about the giants, and that's a big thing that I actually research on the side, is the giants. Like people find giant skeletons, especially in New York, was really big for that. And then they magically go missing at the Smithsonian Institute, which they disappear. But people have unearthed giant skeletons, which then they kind of consider, they keep trying to say it's a hoax, they aren't real, yada, yada, yada. But we also know that the media lies to us. We also know that if they don't want you to know something, they'll lie to us. A perfect example is the Pentagon in the United States that says UFOs don't exist for how long now? But then they released the Navy footage saying UFOs exist. So it's like, they continue to lie about things, and then they magically wait for the moment where they can't hide it no more. So Diane, this is right up your alley. I got another question above talking about, if we remember we're talking UFOs and we're talking about extraterrestrials and maybe Bigfoot being something like that. If you remember that the Hudson Valley had that big UFO flap going back, I think, was it the 70s or the 80s? 70s down in Pine Bush, New York. And we do have so many Bigfoot sightings that come out of the same area where we had that UFO flap. So do you think, and I'm going to put it up, and Brett Lawrence, he says, because of your general region, he goes, any thoughts of, on the Hudson Valley UFO accounts? Because we do get these stories of, all the UFO flaps that happen. And we do have an understanding that down in the Hudson Valley, it's on a ley line area where it's a very magnetic area. It's a natural, the world's natural ley lines. So do you think there is a connection, though, between UFO activity and Bigfoots all being in the same area? Or do you think it's like one and the same, that maybe they are connected and coming out of the UFOs?
I personally think it's somehow connected. Just from like my own research and opinion since starting all of this, I feel like wherever you find UFOs, you'll find a Bigfoot. Also, speaking in terms of like energy, there's also been stories of like UFOs flying around like tornadoes and different like super cell thunderstorms. So, you know, I wonder if they somehow in a way can like collect energy. So I feel like there would be a connection between certain areas that are like high magnetic fields and both UFOs and Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I definitely think there's a connection. I know in the woods where we went last week, there's been UFO sightings there along with Bigfoot sightings. So the two have to be connected somehow.
Yeah. I just don't understand how they would be, but there's definitely a connection that the UFO that everyone was talking about in the 70s, I personally saw that. And it went right over my house. We followed it, went in the car, followed it all the way down as far as we could. And that's the area where there's been a lot of Bigfoot sightings. Everywhere. Yeah. It's true, everywhere that was, there are a lot of sightings. So I don't know what it could be, but I feel there's a connection somewhere.
Yeah, and maybe it stems right back from, when we were talking a little bit earlier about orbs. We talk about orbs in the woods, which, maybe, these areas have high energy somehow, whatever they could be, electromagnetic fields, natural fields that are in the environment. We all know that, limestone and those kind of things hold energy. And things like that. Angela Nolan just said, the Adirondacks has a ton of UFO sightings in the 70s, which, I do, since I research up in the Adirondacks, I do know a lot of them. And once again, if I think about it, one of the areas I do research, there was a UFO sighting. So we do have these, parallels. So do you think that do you think that's why so many people think, when they talk about Bigfoot, and talk about it being a paranormal creature, not a living, breathing creature? Why do you think people think that? Do you think it's because there's just so many relations between them disappearing, UFOs? There's just not enough evidence to back up anything, so we just have to say it's a paranormal being because we're getting frustrated because we can't find anything. Like, why do you think? You know what I mean? And I do believe that's why so many some people, and I would say so many, but some people are just like, listen, I'm out there day and night, putting the work in, boots on the ground, and I don't find anything. So I know that they're here, but I'm not finding it. So instead, it must be an interdimensional thing, and it's there, like you said, like the predator, but we just can't see it. With cloaking, here's another thing with cloaking is, another person asked it. Let me get the question up, because I know Mike talked a little bit about cloaking before, and I have a theory on cloaking. What do you think a Bigfoot cloaks itself? And what you say, like Mike said before he had to leave, like Harry Potter, like they put the cloak on. Oh, I'm here, but now I'm gone. Like, do you think a Bigfoot can disappear?
I don't know. I think it has something to do with their fur. Their hair. I think they can camouflage very well. I think it picks up the colors of where they are or however they do it. And you see them and then they blend into something else. So I really don't know. I mean, but like I said, I saw that thing in the video and, no one else mentioned it. No one else saw it. They were just mentioning, oh, yeah, you did hear the howls. But I saw that, and not one person said anything about it. And that, I'll tell you, that really made me think of, I always keep an open mind. It could be anything. We don't know. But that to me was cloaking. That's what I thought cloaking would be, the camouflage, and you can only see certain shades of light, like a chameleon. Maybe they can do that. I don't know.
Right. I'm not familiar with cloaking, so I'm not. I don't know. I would have to think that it's more of a camouflage thing. I don't know how I feel about cloaking. I know what it is, but I don't. I've been researching it so much. I just feel like it would be more of a camouflage.
I think, speaking of it paranormally, maybe they could make themselves invisible somehow. And I mean, I know personally I've seen some type of image. I don't know what it was, but when we were out in the woods at one point, I did see some kind of image. I don't know what it was, but it could be that they make themselves invisible somehow.
Yeah.
My thing with cloaking is this, and I mean, I don't think they cloak. What I think they do is, it was kind of mentioned earlier, I think they can change the vibration. And what I mean by change the vibration of the environment, it's a frequency. You know how I feel, like you hear me talk about all the time, everything in life has a frequency. And because it has a frequency, we talk about infrasound, we talk about other things along those lines. So if we're going to go by, frequency and, the environment, infrasound, animals that can create infrasound, things like that. What I think is they're able to create some kind of frequency with is a vocal. So I think it's a vocal that they put out, which then, affects our brains, and the fact that if it makes our eyes vibrate just enough, right? If our eyes are vibrating just enough, it could just magically disappear. And it's not that it disappeared. It's that it's creating a physical response on our human body that then makes us, it distorts. So it distorts us enough that we think it disappeared because it's affecting us. But in real life, it's actually still there. It's a defense mechanism that it can just get out of there and leave. And that's kind of how I put cloaking, because we know things give off frequency. We know things give off infrasound. And what it does is it vibrates your eyeballs. And when it starts vibrating our senses in our eyes and physically does things, boom, next thing you know, things just disappear, but they don't really disappear.
Makes sense.
And I kind of put it as that, like a vocal, because we talk about infrasound and we talk about how they're able to, talk and give off whatever, tree knocks. Some people think tree knocks are just going with their mouth, not they're actually knocking on trees and things like that. And if we do think about these theories, it logically would make sense. But I mean, that's what I kind of think cloaking is. It's a vibration change. It's a frequency change in the environment, and it just kind of stuns us.
I like the sound of that. That makes sense. It really does.
Yeah, and we don't think about these things. I mean, lions do it. They give off infrasound. They can do those things. Whales do it. Dolphins can give off sound, and they can hear that stuff for miles in the water. Elephants stomp on the ground, and they send that vibration miles in the ground. So if we to affect other animals. So if we kind of put that all together, the largest creature, like we'll say, and I want to say like primate, but we'll just put it, the largest primate, if Bigfoot is a primate, would have the same type of, traits or abilities in some way, shape, or form. Maybe it does it to stun animals when it's hunting. Maybe it's a defense mechanism. So, it would have some sort of ability to possibly do that. That would make sense. And here's what Dean says that, and here I go up in the comments. I'm trying to keep up with the comments, everybody. Sorry. And then Dean said frequency alteration and odd reflectivity in their hair. So, like Diane said, their hair may give off that camouflage where they're able to blend into their environment even more. Especially if you're, it depends. Especially at nighttime, you can't see anything at nighttime. And then you hear about my theory about Bigfoots in the pines. I believe they're in the pines a lot. And if you're in the pine areas, you know how dark it is in the pines to begin with. A lot of trees, they can just disappear in the pines. So that would definitely make sense. Awesome. This is good. This is good stuff. This weird stuff. Such weird stuff. But all right. So girls, we're going to wrap it up here.
Okay.
Yeah, buddy. So any last words? We'll start with Diane and go right down.
Well, I think to keep an open mind, anything is possible. I mean, probably 20 years ago, I never thought any of this would be possible. But I just, I see what I see and I hear what I hear, and I just accept it and try to, try to understand it. I don't dismiss anything anymore. I think anything's possible.
Carmen?
I'd have to agree with Diane that everything that you hear, I think, is worth investigating. Not to just like dismiss things. There's so many things that we just don't even have our heads wrapped around yet, that we just don't understand, and that's kind of why we're here doing what we're doing, is to like fit the pieces of the puzzle together. Really, just having an open mind and trying things from every aspect to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I guess I agree with both Diane and Carnan. Keeping an open mind. I know a few years ago, I definitely wouldn't have thought I would be sitting here talking about this. And, just listening to everybody's different perspectives has definitely opened up my eyes a lot in this whole world of paranormal and Bigfoot.
Well, Footer Nation, as you see, like within the Project X ambassadors and researchers throughout the state, we take all the sides of the Bigfoot phenomena, from the flesh and blood side, which myself is on, to the paranormal spiritual side of Bigfoot, which these three ladies are on, to UFOs. We're talking about the UFO side. I guess we can all learn from each other. I'm still learning all about this paranormal stuff as far as Bigfoot's concerned, and there's a lot to learn. The main thing is that we all respect each other and do it in a very positive way. Look, we can all agree to disagree all day long, but as long as we do it in a positive manner, that is how we learn, my friends. Well, with that said, Footer Nation, Project X we're working hard. I just got everybody's reports in. Now I have to do my work. The data is coming. The first set of experiments is done. We are now going on to the second set of experiments for this weird project. We're in the process of also putting an expedition together coming in the spring, where all of us are going to get together and head out into the woods and document all this stuff for you that we've been trying to, come up with all the answers, or at least plausible theories. We're doing our best. Thank you for watching. And as always, keep it squatchy, and we'll see you out in the trail. Deuces, everyone.